All right. Yeah, I'm actually having one of those days myself. Scratch it till the next day.
Yeah, that's it's thankfully tomorrow wasn't that busy, so I'll double up on stuff there. But yeah, it was just one thing after another this morning that I wasn't planning on, and little things like we went out to a restaurant with my wife last night and forgot my credit card there. And didn't realize it till this morning. So I had to call them. They had it, thankfully, but I had to drive 20 minutes to go get it and then 20 minutes to come back. So, that was an hour that was gone. That was not planned for. I didn't have in my calendar go rescue your credit card. So, that's the kind of stuff that's come up today.
Yeah, that's a day in the life of me, man. I'm telling you right there. I've done that three times already. The restaurant, leaving the credit card, signing the receipt,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
forgetting to put the card in your pocket.
Well, there's so many pieces of paper. I think I probably just covered it up. I don't know how I did that, but today one of the things I wasn't expecting was my daughter is moving apartments this weekend, and I went with her to Home Depot to buy boxes and to buy packing tape and whatnot. Wasn't planning on doing that today. She called me this morning asking to do that, and the restaurant ironically is right near the Home Depot, so I got to drive back to the same area twice. But yeah,
Never mind having to
it
do
was one of those.
work.
I pulled out my wallet to go use my card, and it wasn't there. That was the first time I noticed it. And if I would have thought about it for 1 second, I would have said, "Hey, maybe it's down the road," and didn't think of it till I got home because I
Oh,
didn't remember where I used it last. So I had to look at my banking app to go, "Oh, I was just there."
there, yeah.
And when I called them, yeah, they said they had it. So I guess that's good. I didn't have to search through my car or anything. But just one of those things that starts the day off exactly is in the way you weren't planning.
Yeah, yeah. Life throws you
The,
stuff.
the fact I'm only 5 minutes late is a
Incredible.
testament to me not trying to get any of that other stuff done yet today.
Well, thank you. Um, what are your credentials, or how do you want me to introduce you as?
I usually go with pornography addiction expert and author.
All right. And then, is there any particular questions or any piece of info or insight that you want to focus in on in terms of the message
Uh,
today? I know you're
I
releasing the book, so we
yeah.
can.
Well, I mean, I usually do pretty much four types of topics. There's my personal story of addiction, which frankly has been way overplayed, and I've done that interview 12,000 times. There is the how it affects partners. The book I have that has sold the best by far is the book that I did with a therapist about how it affects partners because it's unlike any other addiction that way. I talk about it just porn addiction as a whole. I can throw statistics out. I can talk about, what it really is, how it's affecting people. And then the one that I've been doing a lot lately is what the pandemic has meant to the online porn industry because it has literally changed it overnight. And one of the things that people don't know about is OnlyFans. If you're over 33 years old, you've never heard of OnlyFans. If you're under 33 years old, it's one of the biggest parts of your culture today. And
OnlyFans,
it's
it's called. What's it?
OnlyFans, yes.
I don't even know what it is.
How old are you?
I'm 52.
Then you don't know about OnlyFans. Put it this way: OnlyFans is it's the biggest boom to pornography probably since Playboy magazine. And it's going to catch up with the rest of culture soon. But much like the youth culture used Snapchat for a few years before anybody else heard of it, right now they are on OnlyFans. OnlyFans is a website where you can do make it yourself pornography at home and post it
Oh,
to your page. Post it to your page. Since January, over 600,000 people have signed up to make pornography.
oh wow. Well, let me start the podcast. Let me do the intro, and I think
So you
guiding.
you, you drive the ship. You drive the ship. I'll follow you anywhere.
And let's cover those four areas, man. That sounds like a great outline for the podcast. Well,
Okay.
all right. So I have the absolutely amazing Joshua Shea on the show today. He's a pornography addiction expert slash author. And you have a new release coming out called Porn in the Pandemic, How 3 Months in 2020 Changed Everything.
Yeah, it was actually just released. It's now on Amazon. You can look for the title, like I said, Porn in the Pandemic. You can look up my name, or you can go to my website, recoveringpornaddict.com, and there's a link right to the Amazon page there. And it takes a look at the months of March, April, and May of 2020, and essentially how the online porn industry transformed overnight, with everybody in the world having to stay at home and being on their computers and not having that person-to-person contact. It was Valhalla for the pornography companies, and they absolutely seized upon it. So it's a different online world than it was even 6-8 months ago. As we record this in August 2020, January 2020 looked nothing like it does today.
Oh, that's fascinating. Well, before we jump, let's jump into that in a little bit. But tell us a little bit about where you're from, a little bit about your story and how you got into
Yeah,
this.
yeah. In a nutshell, I was a pornography addict from the word go. I saw hardcore pornography for the first time when I was 12 or 13 years old, introduced by an older cousin. I'm kind of textbook when it comes to who an addict is, depending on exactly which study you look at. Between 90 and 94% of porn addicts have some type of unresolved trauma, usually some kind of sexual, physical, or mental abuse, but it can be other types of trauma as well. And I fall into that as far as mental and sexual abuse at the hands of a babysitter when I was young. And I truly believe that pornography helped me to deal with that trauma when it was still fresh, and actually helped me to repress those memories and allowed me to move on, because I ultimately learned when I got into rehab when I was 37 years old and ultimately decided it was time to get some help. I learned that my pornography addiction was about control. And when you think about control, it makes sense with pornography. As a little kid, I lost control in that environment that I was in. And that environment was a sexually inappropriate environment, sexually abusive environment. So it almost only makes sense that I enjoyed pornography, or I found my safety and my control in pornography, because the person on that magazine page or on the computer screen can't say no to you. If I want to have a white woman that day, I can. If I want to have a black woman that day, I can. If I want to have 3 women, 2 men, a horse, and Irish music, I can. It's all about control, and that's what pornography was for me. It was a way for me to exert control in my life, and that was where the addiction was. That was what it did for me. I don't think it had a lot to do with what was on the page. I don't think it had a lot to do with what people were doing on the page. It tickled that itch in my pleasure center, in my brain, where the dopamine and the oxytocin and all that fun stuff lives. It scratched that itch that needed to convince me that I had control in my life. Eventually, when I faced up to the addiction, I did go into rehab for it. I am a journalist by trade. I'm a big researcher. I like reading academic studies. I'm that geek. But I know most people aren't. And when I tried to find resources about pornography, there's very little out there for the layman. I could learn about addiction as a whole, but very little about porn addiction. And when I finally went to rehab, I met people with porn addiction, all types of people. There is no stereotypical addict, but what I learned that I wasn't alone, And that was such an important, powerful message that I decided to do the one thing I know how to do in this world, which is write. And I first wrote a book about my story about pornography, just pretty much a straight up autobiography of the last few years of my life before getting help. And I expected to get response from addicts, which I did, but it blew my mind that I got so much response from partners of addicts that after talking to them for 6-8 months online, I teamed up with a licensed marriage and family therapist that I know, and we co-wrote a book together specifically for the partners of addicts, much like my wife was. And she even commented to me that there's so little for addicts out there, there's even less for their wives. And wives, girlfriends, even family members suffer differently with porn or sex addiction than a lot of other addictions out there. And I've been giving presentations at colleges and libraries, churches, before the pandemic started. And I'm going to be giving a TED Talk later this year about pornography and how we can deal with the younger generation and perhaps bringing down some of these astounding numbers. And I just really, I feel like my life right now is about pushing the fact I'm not anti-pornography. I'm not about shaming. I know there were a lot of sidetracks with trafficking and other things like that. My big belief is just that we need to educate our young people that much like smoking or drinking or some of these addictions, pornography can turn into addiction. Make your own choice when you're 18 years old, but let's at least teach these children, that it can be potentially harmful, because I wonder if my parents had done that with me, if I would be where I am today.
That is a great cause, man. You're inspiring, and I'm going to love this conversation. This is good stuff. So I did an interview with Stacy Sprout maybe about a year ago, and she's kind of talked a little bit about, she's a sex therapist, but she had talked about what you're touching on, and so I want to get your perspective on it. And it's this idea that sort of like the brain, the younger you are, the more it gets sort of like I would say hardwired, hot wired towards porn. And then she talked about the dopamine dump happening, becomes associated with it. And then she said that what oftentimes will happen brain chemistry wise is that people will need to seek out more and more like hardcore porn to get the same effect. And I don't know if you've heard any of that in Rhea, but if
absolutely. Think of it this way: addiction is addiction is addiction is addiction. For what's going on in your mind. Yes, there will be different side effects depending on your addiction, but it's a lot like an alcoholic who starts with beer and then has to move to wine and then has to move to the hard stuff to get that same feeling. Or it's the gambling addict who starts with $50 a hand at blackjack, but then that's not exciting, has to go to 100, then 200, then 500. Pornography is the same way. I mean, I was into very vanilla pornography for the longest time. But when I would be at my worst, when I needed it as a crutch at those times in my life, especially, and I've been sober 6 years now, but that last year or two before I got help, that was some of the most extreme, bizarre stuff that I looked at, because just seeing a guy and a girl having sex wasn't enough. Just seeing, two girls modeling wasn't enough. I needed to find, other genres, and you can go on to Pornhub or any other site, and they got 120 different genres for BDSM and old people and playing with food and any crazy genre you can imagine. And I have probably seen them all, because a lot of porn addicts who reach that critical phase that I did report this quest for the perfect porn clip. That porn addicts will spend 30 minutes in front of a computer, and that turns into an hour, and that turns into 2 hours, and then 4 hours, because they want to get that little pleasure center tickled, yet they can't find the right clip. They can't find the right picture. They keep looking and looking and looking, and then hopefully, they're praying they find that right picture. They're praying that's the piece that tickles their brain. They can get off and be done with it, because for the porn addict, again, it's not necessarily what's on the page. People compare recreational use of pornography to addicted use, when really the only thing they have in common is the orgasm at the end, which is kind of the checkered flag that says you're done. That's really the only thing that it has in common with recreational use of it. Addicts are using for completely different reasons.
So is there, talk a little bit about, because I think like for the listener, oftentimes I'll hear this, they'll say, Ted, is all porn bad? Is there such a thing as a healthy porn user, or is there also a thing of like anybody who uses porn is going to be addicted to it? So what's your perspective on that?
Okay, I'll take it backward. First, science tells us that not everybody who looks at porn is addicted. Statistics tell us not everybody that looks at porn is addicted. The scariest statistic that I repeat to people is there was a study done, I think it was in 2017 or 18, and it found it interviewed 1,500 people, or men of all ages, in the 18 to 30-year-old group. 32% of men said that they either have a problem with pornography or are addicted to it. That was self-reporting, but that's still 32%. 1 out of 3 men said they had a problem. Now, that's scary, but that still means that 2 out of 3 men who look at pornography don't have a problem with it. Much like there are people who can go and have 1 or 2 beers, and then that's all they need, or they can go to a casino, win $50, lose $50, or, it's one of these things where who knows exactly why you become addicted to the substance or behavior you do, but it's absolutely possible to not be an addict. To tackle your other question about the health around pornography, I usually say, I can present to you dozens, if not hundreds, of studies that show pornography affects you in all kinds of ways, whether it's your marriage, your development, physical, mental, that say pornography is negative. I have still not had a single person give me a study that says pornography is good for you. And when people are like, yeah, but that's addicts, I share this story, which is actually pretty new. The last presentation I gave at a college back in December was to a group of about a dozen women in the health center of a local college here in Maine, and they said something that absolutely blew my mind. We were talking about pornography, and one of these women said, I don't like having sex with virgin men because they've been raised on pornography, and that's not real. And a lot of the women around, yeah, me either. I don't want to be with a virgin. Yeah, virgin men are the worst, because we have a generation of men who have been raised on pornography online. And even the most vanilla pornography usually shows a man being aggressive towards a woman, holding her down, calling her names. When it comes to the end, usually they're finishing on a woman's face, which is degrading. It's when a guy who has never had sex gets into this position with a woman, they're taking their cues from the pornography they've seen that they think is completely normal. They think that's what the woman wants. And these women at this college said they don't want to spend the time to retrain these guys. They don't want to have to explain to them that what they're seeing on the screen isn't what people do in real life. And to me, that's the most telling story I've heard in the last year about why pornography is not healthy, because it is teaching a generation of men, at least, or young men, about what sex is, and that's not what a generation of women want right now.
Yeah, so a couple of things I want to bounce off you right now is this idea. It's becoming more clear to me, but it's this idea that, like that study that said 1/3 or 1 out of every 3 guys reported they might have a problem with porn. Well, 2/3 don't. at least by self-report. In comparing it to other addictions, it's very common. Like the majority of people who drink alcohol do not have a problem with alcohol, but there's a certain
Right.
percentage of people that will have a problem with alcohol. So porn is really no different from that standpoint. That we have the majority of people that can probably watch it but not become addicted, but then we have a percentage of people that will. So I think that's interesting. And the other point that I really think about too is the development, with this thing that really stands out in your mind over the past year with this discussion with this in healthcare with these women is the impact on young people's minds. So like let's say a 9 or 10-year-old, 11-year-old stumbles into porn. And so I have a 10-year-old boy now. And what's interesting is he's a gamer. He plays on YouTube. Well, there's no damn censorship on YouTube. They can either be on kids' YouTube, which a lot of kids are like, well, that's completely lame. I don't want to be on that because I can't watch these gaming guys that I like to watch on my videos.
Right.
But once you open the door to that, then you get these ads popping up on the side. And some relatively innocent, but he said, well, I clicked on that, and then it led to this. So then we ended up, he was like, we talked with him, and he thought it'd be a good idea just not to have YouTube, which was probably a good decision. But this is a major issue, I think, especially as I've dived more and more into this topic area with younger. So I think of my exposure has been mostly hearing from parents with young boys who are discovering porn on the internet at like the ages of 9, 10, 11.
The average boy sees hardcore pornography for the first time today at age 8, and the average girl sees hardcore pornography for the first time at age 10.
That's incredible. And that shapes the brain, right? The
Yeah,
dopamine.
absolutely. And while YouTube will claim that it doesn't have pornography, it's one of these things where they have created 1,000,001 gray areas. Like you can see an endless supply of videos of women getting their nipples pierced. That's not considered pornography. You can see a ton of nude yoga. That's not considered pornography. And the way they skirt so many issues when it comes to it, and I've always tried to share with people, we understand pornography is that hardcore XXX stuff, but pornography is also a concept. It is basically whatever, gets you off. And that can be a yoga video. That can be the Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue or a Victoria's Secret catalog or Good Housekeeping. It doesn't have to be what we consider the X-rated pornography. If a Good Housekeeping magazine is doing for you what a Penthouse magazine is doing for another guy, how is that really different in any way? In my view, it's not, because you're utilizing the material in the exact same way. It's still being used as pornography.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. So what do you think about the latest that you're seeing? I know we had talked a little bit about this in the kind of the pre-interview, but you made some references to what's been going on since COVID in porn and pornography. And I thought it was completely fascinating. So I don't know if you could share some of those insights on kind of what you've been seeing.
Absolutely. When COVID started, I was asked to do a few interviews here and there, and I do a lot of interviews about pornography addiction, and people started asking about what I thought would happen during the pandemic. And that was right at the same time that Pornhub offered free access to its premium site for a week to everybody in the world since they were all stuck at home. And for an online pornography company, this has been Valhalla. I mean, what is better than getting 80% of the world's population stuck at home in front of their computers, unable to interact with other people, being alone? I mean, it's a pornographer's dream when it comes to this. So what we've seen is that there was such a demand for pornography that these different websites and these different cam sites had to actually start recruiting. I kid you not, it's in my book. There was actually a porn site that put out a press release specifically trying to get furloughed McDonald's workers to come to their website and make pornography for them through their webcams. And when you think about it, it makes sense because when COVID hit, who lost their jobs first? It was all the service workers. Who are the service workers? The waitresses, the waiters, the bartenders. It's usually young, good-looking, outgoing people who have those jobs. And what we saw was there was a website that's been around for, I think it's 2 or 3 years now, out of the UK called OnlyFans. And that had about 300,000 users or 300,000 people across the world creating pornography. It's essentially like a Facebook page where I let people know that I have a page on OnlyFans, and then I charge you whatever I want for you to come and subscribe to my page. So let's say I charge you $10 a month. You subscribe to my page. That gives you access to a certain amount of photos and a certain amount of videos. Now, I can make those completely G-rated, or I can make those X-rated. Obviously, people tend to move towards the R and X to get people to look at them. What I can also do is charge you to see secret videos and secret photos. And then I can also charge you if you want to text with me or if you want to change messages back and forth. If you want to talk to me, well, it's going to be $1 for every text we exchange. And there are guys who, stuck at home, will do this. And this had such an explosion early on that we went from 300,000 creators of pornography on OnlyFans in January to the last number I saw in July was just over 900,000. So that essentially means that we have had more than 500,000 people decide that they want to go online and they want to produce pornography from the comfort of their own home and make money off of it. And I believe that this is directly because this generation was raised on the internet, was raised on pornography. Somebody who's, late 40s like me or 50s like yourself, we were raised with a bit of a taboo towards pornography. There's a bit of a stigma towards it. These kids don't have a stigma towards it, or these young adults, I should say, don't have a stigma. So taking pictures of, your genitals or your butt or your boobs or whatever and posting them online is not as big a deal as it would have been for you or I. And conversely, think about like our grandmothers and, if they had a 2-piece bathing suit, there was this much skin showing right at the waist. It was an inch because they were so much more modest. And what we've seen is that now you've got people willing to, amateurs willing to have hardcore sex acts on screen and charge somebody else $10 to look at them. And, there's hundreds of thousands of people joining this in the last, 8 months that don't see a problem with it. And I really wonder what's going to be the fallout of that years from now. And I'm not even talking about, what if a future boss sees this? Because I don't think that's going to matter. There's going to be so much porn of so many people out there that I wonder more about the mental aspect. I wonder more about the emotional fallout. What happens when you, at 21 years old, spend a year and a half making pornography? How do you feel about that when you're 30? How do you feel about that when you're 40? That's kind of what I worry about. And that's not a world we've had to worry about before this COVID-19 virus.
That's incredible. You really outline it really well, like connecting the dots, because I've seen that just raising. So I have a 21 and a 19-year-old girls, and I have a 10-year-old boy. But watching them go through high school and then hearing stories like near the end of their high school years of other students posting stuff of, nude pictures, that sort of thing, the school getting wind of it, them getting called to the office, suspended, etc. But as I kind of retrace my steps as they've gone through high school and now they're in college, I saw like it jives with what you're talking about. Like I saw an increase of episodes like that. Like it seemed like it was more common than I ever thought it
Well,
was.
and like I mentioned, in talking about this over the last several months, I have found that the line of demarcation is 33 years old. If you're over 33, odds are you've never heard of OnlyFans. I bet if you asked your daughters, whether you want to or not, have you heard of OnlyFans? That is part of their current culture. Much like Snapchat was part of youth culture for a couple of years before the rest of us heard of it. It's just startling how many people are making pornography. And think about this, how the world has changed. When you or I were in high school, if there would have been a picture of the popular good-looking cheerleader in a bikini, oh my God, people would have gone nuts for that. Can you believe that we've got this girl in a picture in a bikini?
Yeah.
And now everybody with an Instagram, every girl with an Instagram has to have bikini photos on it. Every high school guy on Instagram has to have a picture of him with his shirt off, just wearing shorts. That's just the normal everyday culture, how much that has changed. And now, instead of a bikini picture being extreme like it was for us, now the extreme is the sexting pictures that get passed around, the nude pictures that they send each other. And then once they turn 18, there's nothing illegal about it, so they're producing more of it. There was a statistic I saw not too long ago that said for the first time in history, a couple of years ago, that the people who are producing the most child pornography are the children.
That is it. Yeah, just as we connect the dots, this makes so much more sense on the trajectory that this generation is on, and that we would suddenly see this huge influx of young people making their own porn and trying to make money off of it. And then you have COVID that hits. So like you're saying, all these people in the service industry, they get laid off, etc. Well, what else can you do? And you could probably maybe make more money doing that, working less hours.
A lot of them do. I interviewed several for my book, and they were like, I can either fold clothes at the Gap for $14 an hour, or I can work 3 hours a day and make $300 talking to guys online. And all I have to do is post one photo a day. I take a picture of myself when I get out of the shower. I post that, and then I spend 3 hours talking to them. And there's $300. Why do I want to go back to folding shirts at the Gap?
Yeah, yeah, this is like very compelling the more you think about it and how young people are getting hooked into it. So let's talk more about like I like where you started out when you talked about the control. Like we were talking about porn addiction and that it really maybe didn't have even so much to do with what was on the magazine or in the video as much as the control. Because I think back, so I've been in the addiction field for a long, long time and just working, one of the key issues we had, like I especially think back to my residential days and really, and even outpatient days, that people really that got hooked oftentimes the key ingredient between all of them was getting connected, relating to other people, getting support, and coming to terms with their own feelings. And I don't know if
Yeah,
it's
and that
that
was
simple, but
well, it's simple, but boy, it is some damn hard work.
yeah,
And that's the thing. I mean, that was for me. I'm now 6.5 years sober. I still go to therapy once every 2 weeks. And early on, I had to go every week, sometimes twice a week, sometimes 2 hours at a time. Like I said, I told you, in our pre-interview that I did go to a rehab for pornography in Texas. I was there for 7 weeks. And I really had to learn, and I appreciate this, and you obviously know this, is that addiction is usually a symptom of a bigger problem.
it is.
And that's what I didn't understand, is I thought this was my problem. So any of those times that I tried to pull it back, any of those times I might have tried to quit, well, the pornography was serving a bigger master. It was then that master demanded that it be served, so I couldn't quit. What I had to do was go into this intense therapy and ultimately learn what it was that caused this. And it was the fact that when I was 5, 6 years old, that when I was creating my survival skills at the home of this babysitter who I went to when my parents were at work, is that I developed survival skills that were very maladaptive for a 5-year-old. So they weren't going to work for a 15-year-old or 25-year-old or 35-year-old. And I had my safety taken away there. I had my sense of control taken away there. There was nothing I could do. And I look at the rest of my life and it's things like, I needed control, so I collected more baseball cards than anyone I ever met. I needed control, so I started my own businesses so I could be the boss. I needed control, so every room in my house that I could put my foot down, that's the color that I wanted it. Since I've been in recovery, my wife's painted every wall in our house to whatever color she wants because I let that go.
Yeah.
But what's amazing is that once I learned how I became the person I became, it was actually not that hard to let go of the pornography because I learned who the master was that was being served. And yeah, I needed to have techniques and I needed to go through a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. So in the moments when I was having issues, I could make a healthy choice. And it's not just about pornography. It's about deciding I was never going to follow politics again. It was about pulling myself off of Facebook and not being there. I had to make myself a much healthier life. Cognitive behavioral therapy helped me in real terms to create that life, while the deeper therapy helped me understand how I became the person I did. And that was what recovery is. And now I come on, shows like yours, and this is part of my recovery, just talking about it, spreading the information, spreading what I've learned, because I don't want people to end up where I was. I firmly believe that pornography needs to be talked about by parents, but pornography is not part of the sex talk. Pornography is part of the cigarettes or drinking talk. It is a substance that is out there that needs to be avoided by young people. When they're 18, they can make their own decisions, good, bad, or indifferent, but it needs to be brought up as part of this is the stuff you stay away from when you're young. It's not a matter necessarily of, this is not what mommy and daddy do. This is not, making babies. This is something different. You can talk about pornography as part of the sex talk, but I think it needs to be part of the warnings talk. And I think you can make that very age appropriate.
Yeah, so this is really interesting because this is a challenge because I want to talk about the impact on partners for sure with porn addiction, but this other piece is about the kids. And I hear some parents saying, well, they're kind of unsure of, well, it's out on the internet. Is it part of sexual exploration? Do we demonize it? Do we say that's a horrible thing to even look at, make the kids feel bad for looking at it? So I hear that, and this is what I'm talking about, is in a lot of parents' heads. All right, so my kid saw some. What do I do about it? Do we just let it go? Just say, don't go to that site again? Or do we handle it a different way?
Yeah, well, like I said, I think that it has to be age appropriate. You can tell a 6-year-old if you are on the computer or the iPad, or you're with a friend and they're on the computer or iPad, and you see some pictures of people without their clothes. That's not really for kids to look at. That's supposed to be for adults. And if you see something like that, just let mommy or daddy know, and leave it at that.
Yeah.
Ta-da! If you see a cigarette, don't put it in your mouth. Ta-da! It's just as simple as that. As the kids get older, you can bring up more. I mean, I believe that especially with boys. If you tell 13 or 14-year-old boys about porn-induced erectile dysfunction, you are going to deal with a huge amount of the pornography problem, because 13 and 14-year-old boys want girlfriends. They do like looking at porn when they can get it, but they want girlfriends, and they don't see anything wrong with porn. However, I do advisement and coaching. I worked with a 22-year-old guy last year who had porn-induced erectile dysfunction for the last 2 or 3 years. He had a wonderful girlfriend, 20-year-old girl, cute as a button, nice as can be. I talked to both of them online, and they learned he could not finish when they were together unless pornography was playing in the room. No matter what she did, no matter what they tried, pornography had to be playing in the room, because with porn-induced erectile dysfunction, the only way that these guys can get off, if they can get off at all, is with pornography. So what these two did was they figured out if he was in one room in their apartment, she was in a different room in their apartment, they could Skype or they could FaceTime. And essentially his brain was told that was pornography. So she would be sexy and doing sexy things over the computer, even though she's only 30 feet away. And when he got to the point that he was stimulated enough, she would essentially run into the bedroom and they would finish like normal people do. And that was their life. And this is a 22-year-old guy. And this is absolutely tragic. But we're not talking about porn-induced erectile dysfunction. And we're certainly not talking about it to 13 and 14-year-old boys. And that may scare them. And that's not always the worst thing in the world. But I think that that story, at least, is absolutely a great warning. It's absolutely a cautionary tale. This is what can happen to you if pornography goes too far. So don't let your pornography go too far. That's just something. Don't let your pornography go too far. That's something we don't say to 13-year-olds. And we need to also recognize that more and more females who are young are seeing pornography, are enjoying pornography. Pornography was always directed towards the straight white male, because that's where the money was at. Now, in today's internet world, it costs almost nothing to create pornography, and it costs almost nothing to distribute pornography. So if you look at statistics of where the pockets of addiction are exploding, you're seeing it with black men. You're seeing it with white women. You're seeing it with the Catholic Church, the LDS Church. All of these groups that didn't go to the adult theater 20 years ago, that would never be caught dead renting a movie, or that didn't have pornography that was geared towards them. Well, it's out there on the internet now. So you're seeing, straight white men don't have the exclusive rights on a libido. Everybody has a libido, and now it's easy and it's secretive to get at this stuff. And that's why you're seeing it hit everybody else. So when people tell me, oh, this is a men's problem, or this is just a straight guy problem, or it's absolutely not. Anybody can become a pornography addict. And that's really important to underline and italicize and boldface. Anybody can be a porn addict.
Excellent. Well said. Well said. Excellent. Well said. I want to take some time now to talk about partners. So there's the person that gets hooked in, they become addicted to porn, and they travel a certain journey. And what I learned with addiction, from opioids, heroin, to alcohol, to coke, is often the partners are the forgotten ones. And I know we opened this podcast up talking about just not a lot of resources for somebody who is addicted to porn. I'm even surprised there's actually a residential or some sort of sex addiction program out in Texas, because they're few and far between. I don't know if that's what they specialize in, but they are hard to find.
When I was looking, and this was back in 2015, I gave it up in 14, and I went to rehab in 15. I think there was 7 places in the country that had a real program, and I went to this Texas one ultimately because it had it accepted my insurance the best. That's how I had to go, and they had to say that I have bipolar disorder. They had to say that I was there for bipolar and I was there for impulse control disorder because the DSM still won't address addiction because the DSM is so woefully slow at adapting to anything that happens in our world that insurance companies kind of just say, well, porn addiction's not a real thing because the DSM doesn't say anything about it. But the fact is, the DSM has been updated, 5 times since it first came out in 1952, with the last time being 2012 and 1994.
Yeah.
That's 26 years. This thing's been updated twice. We've only really been studying porn addiction for about 10, 15 years. So there's nothing about it there. The World Health Organization has finally created sexual impulse disorder as a diagnosable condition, which is the first step towards eventually getting to sex and porn addiction. But it's one of these things that, there's so little help out there because insurance won't cover it because they don't want to admit that it's a real thing.
Yeah, and it's such a parallel because that's pretty much how people who are hooked into alcohol or drugs will pick the place they go to. Is like whatever place their insurance takes, which makes total sense to me because they don't want to be, socked with a huge bill. But one of the things I learned was that as the person with drug or alcohol addiction travels through their journey, their partner is oftentimes forgotten. They've already gone through the first part of it. And then what's interesting I always say this about alcohol and drug addiction, is any kind of addiction is self-centering no matter how you cut it. But like the addiction is all about the person, and the partner gets drugged through the mud on that end. And then they go to rehab. And at least in alcohol and drug addiction, it's all about them again. And then near the back end, we open up like family or couple sessions to kind of talk about their side of the story, and they're usually the ones that prompt the person to get into help anyways. And I always think of this family group I did way back in the day, and I kind of got thrown into it, but it was for men and women who were in the intensive outpatient program for alcohol or drug addiction. It was a 4-week family program. So of course the first 2 weeks they're just getting clean, they're sober, they're the cheerleaders, they're rah-rahing them, this is great, our lives were a complete disaster before, so the fact that they're not using is the best thing in the world. But then, usually typically about the third week I always term that the anger group, meaning that the partner saw that this person now is relatively stable. They didn't have to worry about, we wanted to always like temper it and kind of pace it out, but really the partner really saw it as, all right, Ted, you're the referee. Now, I get a chance to tell this person what the hell they just put me through, and I'm going to let them really have it because this is what I've gone through. So then really what we see even on the back end of treatment is family therapy and couples therapy is always preferred, but even working in the grind a lot with, seeing tons of clients and that sort of thing and consulting with lots of agencies, family therapy and partner therapy is really kind of doesn't necessarily always happen the way it probably should happen.
No, I agree with that. And I know based on my time in rehab, they spend the first third tearing you down. They spend the next third building you up, and they spend that last third preparing you for the real world. And then you go back to where the problem was. You go back to the same people. And, you feel like a new person, but it's the same old jerks you left. And, you feel like I've got these tools. I'm now going to live a better, healthier life. There's nobody around me living a healthy life. The only people who did were the people I met in rehab. So a lot of people I know and a lot of rehab stories I know, there's a ton of friction between the loved ones you go home to and the person who's now in recovery because they have learned to trust this ragtag group of former addicts at rehab, and now they don't trust their partner, or they want to live a different lifestyle. They don't want to, deal with pornography or gambling or heroin or whatever it is. And what a lot of times breaks these people down. And there's nothing sadder than that post rehab where you just start watching people fall like dominoes, whether it's drugs or alcohol or eating disorders. And I was in a rehab with every type of person. And you see these people fall down because they can't utilize their new tools. They can't figure out a way to enmesh them into their lives. And thankfully, I had a wife, she works in healthcare, who kind of understood this and understood that, I was on that pink cloud and I was, Mr. Rehab. And, I had, and one of the greatest lines I ever heard in rehab was somebody was new there and they were angry. This is just brainwashing. And the therapist there said, "Don't you think you need your brain washed?" And it was one of the greatest lines I'd ever heard, because it was like, yes, absolutely, but you have to be able to successfully merge the tools you learn in this safe cocoon with the world, the real world. And I think that's the real challenge. I found rehab to be the thing that saved my life. It was the most transformative experience I'd ever been through. When I talk to people who are addicts or I talk to their partners, that's the first thing I say is, if you have the resources, if you have the means, go to inpatient rehab. It is it changed my life so much for the better. It put me on a fast track towards recovery. It allowed me to do deep work. It was full-time working on myself. It was my full-time job from 7 in the morning till 8 at night, was to just focus on how I got so screwed up and try to, tease out why it happened and fix it. And I couldn't imagine, one 12-step meeting a week or one 1-hour meeting a week with my therapist wasn't going to do what 7 weeks of rehab did for me.
See,
I'm the biggest proponent of it out there.
Yeah, this is so interesting because, oftentimes people will see porn addiction as much different than alcohol and drug addiction. But as you speak, Joshua, there are so many parallels, unbelievable amount of parallels. I hear like people talk just the way you're talking about their rehab experience, and then also people falling like dominoes after they get out, or when we look at people putting them in outpatient or intensive outpatient, going once or twice a week. Well, if the problem is at a severe level, it just doesn't cut it. They just go out and keep using. Almost similar to kind of what you're talking about. Like if we would have put you in a once a week program, you probably would have continued on. And maybe even told the therapist what they wanted to hear and get your wife off your back, etc.
Well, I was an addict, so I was a liar, manipulator. I could get anybody to, and aside from the fact that I was also an investigative journalist, so I can cold read people like the best fake psychic out there. So I was the world's greatest manipulator. That was, and that's one of the things I have to watch even today, because you don't completely change as a person. And I'll tell you one thing, and I came up with this about a year and a half ago, and I've been repeating it, and people have been starting to do it and telling me just how much they understand now. When you have a partner say, "I don't understand how he's an addict," or "How do you become an addict? How can you not stop? How can you not do this?" I challenge people out there listening who don't truly appreciate what addiction is. Tomorrow, when you wake up in the morning, turn your phone on, turn the volume all the way up, turn on every alert, every little chime, everything you possibly can. Then take a Post-it note and put it across the screen. And then leave that phone next to you during the day. And don't look at it. And you're going to start feeling things. When you hear that text noise, or you hear that Snapchat noise, or the phone rings, or somebody likes an Instagram photo of yours, you're going to start going, "Oh, I got to look at that. Wait, no, I got to look at that. No." Well, you and I grew up at times where there was a rotary phone. If someone died, they had to be lucky enough for you were at home to let you know about it. We didn't have answering machines. We didn't have this, all of a sudden everybody's on top of everybody with social media. We have an addicted society to our phones, but people don't see it as that. So try this tomorrow. Cover up the front of your phone, turn the volume all the way up, and those little feelings you get. 2 or 3 times, you're fine. But I bet you that fourth little chime, that fifth little chime, you're dying to know what's behind that Post-it note. That is exactly what addiction is, whether it's heroin or porn or gambling or whatever. Your mind is telling you, I need to go there. I need to do this. I need to see this. And the way that your mind is telling you to get that satisfaction from finding out what somebody wants on your little smartphone, that's the feeling we get times 1,000 when it comes to our addictions. And telling people that and having some partners actually try that, they've told me that they now better appreciate their partner's addiction after trying that phone experiment because they didn't realize how addicted to their phones they were.
Yeah, I think it's a phenomenal experiment. I might even start using that on some level. I think just for our
trademark.
Yeah, trademark. Listeners, to try it out because I think it gives you great insight into addiction and what people struggle with. So what do you think, how do you think your wife got through it all? Just kind of stay with this partner thing. And I know she was in healthcare, so she kind of understood the pink cloud. But there's a lot of people that aren't.
She understood. Absolutely. And, with porn addiction, it's unlike, and sex addiction, it's unlike any other addiction because the partner immediately thinks they did something wrong. If you're a gambling addict, your wife is not thinking, is he this way because I don't make enough money at work? Or if you're a food addict, she's not thinking, is he a food addict because I just make the best spaghetti sauce in the world? Well, no, you don't ask yourself that. That's silly. But when you're the partner of a porn addict or a sex addict, a lot of times the women ask themselves, am I not enough for him? Am I not enough in bed? Am I not pretty enough? And a lot of times when the addict is in their addicted self, they're blaming their partner. So their partner is actually hearing, I'm not addicted to porn. It's that you're not having enough sex with me. I'm not addicted to, I wouldn't look at porn if you tried more crazy stuff in the bedroom with me. And so they're getting gaslit by the partner who's playing directly into the fears that these women have, and they suffer from betrayal trauma because they start to wonder, who the hell did I marry? Who the hell am I in a relationship with? I didn't know this guy was like this. And my wife understood that my porn addiction started when I was a teenager. I didn't meet her till I was 26. So I had 12 or 13 years to perfect hiding it from people. First my parents, then my college roommate, then the roommates I had, and then girlfriends. I was perfect at hiding my porn addiction. And when you're not looking for it, you're not going to find it. People don't go looking for porn addictions. But when it all came out, when it all happened, my wife was absolutely hurt. She didn't like the fact that, I was sick. She understood I was sick, and that's the key. That's the thing that I have to spend the most time with partners about, is the fact that his porn addiction has nothing to do with you. And I always repeat that a couple times in a row. His porn addiction has nothing to do with you. It doesn't matter what he says. He had this coming into things. It has nothing to do with you. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't draw boundaries and, be very careful in taking care of yourself and work towards creating a mentally, emotionally, and even physically safe environment for yourself. You have to do that as a partner. You have to take care of yourself. You have to think about self-care. And my wife did that. In my last few years of porn addiction, I was also a workaholic. I was almost never home. I was not healthy. I was drinking more than I should have been. I was kind of estranged from her and the kids in a way. She gained a lot of weight because of the stress. After I went into recovery, she went and got lap band surgery. She went through that whole program at the hospital she works at, and she ended up losing over 100 pounds that she brought on because the people around you when you're an addict get sick too. So she understood the value of self-care. And that's the biggest thing is, number one, educate yourself so you can truly understand no matter what your manipulating addict partner says, this isn't your fault. And number two, get yourself a therapist and get a strategy for getting healthy yourself. because I can promise you you're probably not as healthy as you think you are after finding out that he's an addict. Or the man could be the partner and the woman could be the porn addict. I try to drive that point home to him, but in most cases it's a female partner and a male addict.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on this, just that female or the partner perspective, and almost feeling like they did something wrong, and then having to deal with all those feelings. And it actually parallels regular addiction because I've worked with lots of partners where the person they're in the midst of an alcohol or drug addiction, they blame their partner. It's because you're stressing me out. That's why I have to drink or use drugs. It's actually really parallels it. But the part about this, though, that really impacts it is more directly related to intimacy and closeness.
It does, but I also think it doesn't as much as people think. Like, what I got from pornography, I didn't get intimacy from it. I didn't get physical touch. I didn't get love. I still had sex with my wife, but not as much towards the end when my addiction got critical. But you know this. Heroin addicts don't go looking for sex. Alcoholics generally don't go looking for sex, and if they do, they can't perform anyway.
Yeah.
People who are addicts and are really caught in their addiction are not thinking about sex because they're so unhealthy. They're also unhealthy sexually. And the problem with porn addiction or sex addiction is that it ends in an orgasm. It's that checkered flag. Somebody who's a recreational user, they know they're done masturbating to porn when they have their orgasm. Well, how does an addict know? Well, they finally have that orgasm too. That's the checkered flag. But I can tell you, I wasn't using pornography the same way that the recreational guy was. And I try to explain to partners that in some ways, it may be better to be the partner of an addict because he's sick. He's got a brain disease. He's not using this because you're not enough. He's using it because he's sick. For the partner of the recreational user, yeah, he's looking at another lady. He may not want to have sex with you tonight. This may be a problem in your relationship. When it's an addicted situation, it's so much deeper, so much further that you can't bring it back to I'm not pretty enough because this is a deep, deep well that you have to go into.
Yeah, well said, Joshua. I guess maybe in wrapping things up, if somebody was, listening to the podcast and the bells are going off for them, they're like, I'm watching too much porn. I think I'm getting addicted. I relate to Joshua's story in so many ways. What would you say to the person, and what's a good first step for them?
I have learned both with my experience and in dealing with others that the most successful people are the ones who seek out somebody who was an addict in whatever area and was successful or is successful in recovery to talk to them first. Because what you're going to experience, and I have a lot of people who will email me and I'll have a Zoom call with them. And I'm the first person who some of these men, after 15, 20 years of addiction, have ever talked to openly about their addiction. And I'm not shaming them and I'm not blaming them. And I don't care what they looked at. I don't care how extreme or weird it was. I know we're not the porn that we look at. And it's such a relief for these guys to talk to somebody that when they're done with me, they want to get help. They want to go to a 12-step meeting. They want to go to a therapist. They want to go online into a forum and learn more about it. So if I'm going to play the percentages, the thing I would say is find somebody who has been through this, who has been successfully through this, that you can talk to, who you can see was exactly where you are, but you can see got to the other side of it. And that'll give you some hope. That'll make you realize it's possible. And that'll give you someone just to unburden yourself with that isn't going to be, am I not enough for you? Or why are you doing this? Or you're a bad person or any of that stuff, because they've been there and they know that porn addiction is not an issue of morality. It's a disease.
That is like so well said. I just love the fact that when you work with people, you sort of like lift up the veil of shame, so that they can understand themselves and that they're And I really like that phrase, you're not your disease, because we oftentimes just say that just for generally people with addiction, but especially with porn addiction, you're not actually your disease. That's not your whole entire being or identity. And I could
No, and
imagine that would be a relief for people.
yeah, exactly. And, the thing is, you can survive without your porn. I think a lot of people who are addicts of all types believe when you remove my addiction, well, who is left? And I'll tell you, it's basically the same person. The people who thought I was, a complete ass before I got into recovery, a lot of them still think I'm an ass and still think I have a grating personality. And, a lot of the people who loved me, they still love me. It doesn't really change your personality. I still like tiramisu and I still like creme brulee. It doesn't change who you are. It's just a better, healthier version of you. So you don't need to fear it. You don't need to fear labels like addict or addiction. It's just a word. Call yourself obsessive. Say it's a hobby gone wrong. Call yourself a pretty princess. Whatever you need to do to go get help, do it, because these are just words. They don't matter.
I love it. I love it. I love that. Well, Joshua, any closing comments?
Just, two things I always try to drive home to people. Number one, there is no stereotypical addict. I have met men, women, every age, every ethnicity, religion, income level, educational level. There is no stereotypical addict. It's not just a 19-year-old guy living in his mom's basement who's never kissed a girl in real life. I know they're out there, but that's just not who porn addicts are. And number two, if you think you have an addiction, get some help. I let mine reach a really critical place where I thought I was going to rehab for 28 days and I went to rehab for 49 days. Get some help for your addiction if you think you have one. Addiction doesn't end well. It ends in financial ruin. It ends in ruin with your family and friends. It can end with legal problems, and it can also end with you dying. So addiction doesn't end well. If you think you have any of it, get some help.
Well said, Joshua. Definitely, and I would advocate that as well. Reaching out and getting help is the big first step, and obviously, I think it's just a really grain of wisdom to think of finding somebody who's already gone through some of the journey to be that first reach out, because you can begin to see maybe a little bit of the light at the end of the tunnel. So I really like those two big tips. Well, thank you so much for sharing your time with us, Joshua. And then we'll put, you want to say the name of the books you've written? Because I think maybe some listeners might want to check you out a little bit.
My first book was, it's just a straight autobiography, looks at my last few years of addiction. We'll also do some of the origin story. That's called The Addiction Nobody Will Talk About. My second book was the one that I co-wrote with the therapist. That's called, for partners, that's called He's a Porn Addict, Now What? And then the final book that came out earlier this year is Porn in the Pandemic, as we talked about earlier. You can get them on Amazon or come to my website. There's also a lot of other resources if you think you have an issue or you think a loved one does. My website is recoveringpornaddict.com.
Well, thank you so much, Joshua.
And thank you for having me, Ted. I can tell my story, but we also need somebody who's going to carry my story and broadcast it. So I appreciate you having the willingness to do that, because a lot of people out there, it's still too much of a taboo. It's still too much of something that they're afraid to talk about. And that's the ultimate problem with society right now. We don't have to talk about what the pornography is, but we need to talk about the problem around it.
Excellent. Well, thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Well, how do you think it went?
I thought that went well.
Yeah, I thought that
went well.
Yeah, you're very articulate.
I sometimes I'm not, but I was able to give answers that were the right length. Sometimes I go on too long, because I tend to have this thing where I'll answer 4 questions with the one question you ask. Yeah. But if I can keep it short enough, I think I'm auditioning or practicing for my TED Talk.
Yeah.
With some of these interviews lately, because I'm giving longer answers that go in different directions, and I've been going back and listening to a lot of the podcasts, figuring out what I need to say in the talk.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, you're probably unconsciously and consciously preparing for the TED Talk. Just narrowing it down. It's going to be like ultra focused. That'll be good.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's in December. So hopefully that brings me to the next level of being able to do this because the books do okay. I make a few bucks off of advising and stuff. I'm actually creating a course, an online course, a short one for partners, but I'm not getting anything when I go to libraries or schools for the most part, and I need to get a speaking agent and stuff who can line me
Yeah.
up at colleges once we can do that. So because I'm frankly, I'm sick of being a ghostwriter and I'm sick of being a freelance writer. I'd like to, I dredge through that because it pays the bills, but I want to do this full time because I'm passionate about it and it makes me feel good.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. Yeah, so what we'll do is you gave me your picture, and then we'll provide the links for the books. Anything else comes up, let me know. We're probably
Okay.
looking, we're about 5 out now, so probably looking at probably late September, early October.
Oh, well, I hope porn addiction's still a thing then. That's fine. That's good. That's fine.
And then when your TED Talk comes out, just give me a shout out, and then I'll run it through my channels and stuff and promote it.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. And yeah, once the show comes out, let me know, and I'll put it up on my website and pump it up in my email list and all that happy stuff, and let people know it's out there.
That sounds good. Man, you're a cool dude.
Okay.
This is probably, I mean, you were
Well,
so succinct in how you talked about it. It's so real. And I think like it's impactful on people, man, because this is like a taboo subject. And I'm just telling you, man, just having this thing with my 10-year-old, him discovering porn on the internet. I'm like, and then my neighbor friends, like my son, yeah, we just caught him. We looked at his history. He's like looking at all kinds of sites, and it's all this like crazy YouTube shit. It's like this.
well, in my book, my latest book, I talk about this how before I went to get therapy, I actually cracked the code on porn on YouTube. And the key is, and I don't say this on shows because I don't want to advertise it, but the key to watching porn on YouTube is knowing foreign languages. If you type in, I can tell you the word naked in like 7 languages because you just have to put that word into YouTube and you'll come up with porn.
Oh
And
wow, I didn't. That is interesting.
you can't find a triple X porn from today on YouTube, but you can find a triple X porn from Italy from 1978
Wow.
if you know what you're looking for.
Yeah. Well, I learned a couple things from this podcast. It shows how dated I am. I
Yeah,
am going to ask.
yeah, it's
I,
one of those things that it's such an underground culture that we need to bring it out more into the open. And I try to be careful not to make these things how-to videos to find pornography.
yeah,
Uh, but I was so deep into it, and I was because regular pornography wouldn't do it for me eventually. So I had to go find this weird foreign shit from the late 70s, because that was new to me. I
yeah,
hadn't seen that before. And like any addict, you need something new to tickle those dopamine receptors. So that's how I started to find some of this crazy stuff on YouTube that is completely porn free if you ask them.
yeah, yeah, totally. Well, man, I want to wish you well. Take care and
Thanks.
stay true to the path, man. You are impacting people's lives.
I appreciate you saying that. Thanks a lot, Ted.
All right, take care. We'll keep you posted.
All right, bye now.
Bye. It always takes me a while.